This entire sim rig cost me about 140 euros. And I know what you're thinking. It looks rough around the edges. It's made from wood. It might look a bit wonky, but here's the thing. It works incredibly well. In fact, in some ways, it's better than commercial rigs that cost a lot more than this. And building my rig saved me at least 300 to 500 euros compared to buying something pre-made. Today, I'm going to show you that you can do that as well. Plus some other budget tricks that have genuinely transformed my sim racing setup for super cheap. We all know sim racing can be expensive. And when you're on a budget, it's crucial to prioritize your upgrades wisely so you don't waste money. Your actual equipment, your wheelbase, pedals and wheels, that's where you see the biggest performance improvements. But what about where you mount all that gear? A wheel stand? A full sim rig? Look at the prices and you'll quickly realize those are really expensive too. Well, I'm here to tell you they don't have to be. When I started sim racing, like most people, I was racing at my desk. And if you have been or still are doing that, you know the pain. Every single time I wanted to race, I had to clamp the wheel to the desk, position the pedals on the floor, usually propped up by some random metal box so they wouldn't slide away, and then put rubber pads under my office chair so it wouldn't roll backwards when I hit the brake, and then plug everything in. By the time I had everything set up, I already spent 10 minutes just getting ready to race. But it wasn't even the setup time itself that killed my motivation. It was that I couldn't even get myself to start the process, because I knew what a lengthy and annoying task it would be to just get everything clamped and positioned correctly. The friction of setup was literally preventing me from enjoying the hobby. I'd think I have an hour, I could do a couple of races, but then I'd remember the setup process and just not bother. That had to change. So I started looking at solutions. And the first thing most people look at is a wheel stand, right? But the cheapest wheel stands that are actually decent start around 120 euros. There are some really cheap 80 to 90 euro options, but those really don't look great. So realistically, you're looking at 120 to 200 euros for a proper wheel stand. And what do you get for that money? A metal frame. That's it. You're still using your office chair. You're still dealing with some setup friction, even if it's less than the desk clamp situation. Now compare that to the cheapest full sim rig with a seat I could find, which was around 500 euros. That's a lot more expensive. And then there is my DIY wooden rig, which costs 140 euros. Total, with a seat. Let me put that in perspective. For less money than a decent wheel stand, I built a complete rig. Honestly, wheel stands sit in this weird middle ground where it's one of the worst values in sim racing in my opinion. Unless you just don't have the physical space for a rig, I personally don't see why you would want to use a wheel stand. You're spending 120 euros or more for something that doesn't actually solve the core problem, which is having a proper, comfortable, dedicated racing position. So I decided to build my own rig. And I know that seems daunting. You might say, I'm not handy enough for that, or I don't have the skills. Well, let me show you something. Look at this. See this splintered wood? That's because I didn't pilot drill the hole properly. And over here, this looks really messy. I'm not a carpenter. I'm not some master craftsman. But you know what? I still made it work. It's sturdy, it's comfortable, and it does everything a 500 euro or more commercial rig does, apart from maybe the on-the-fly adjustability. But you could even build that in if you wanted. Here's what I spent. A used gaming chair on a metal base. I got mine for 30 euros. You can find something similar on the usual marketplaces. Maybe not with that exact kind of frame, but that's okay. Or if you have an old office chair or gaming chair lying around, you can use that. You can either use it as is, and just build a wooden enclosure around the base and wheels to keep it fixed in place, or strip off just the seat part and build a wooden base for that. Lots of options depending on what you can source. I've seen people buying used car seats as well. Those probably work great for this. Next up, wood from the hardware store was about 70 euros. This is all for the main structure. Wood screws and some metal angle brackets, 25 euros in total. The angle brackets aren't strictly necessary, but they do add some extra rigidity. An old IKEA table that I wasn't using for the pedal mount, 10 euros. Though you could just as easily build this part from wood, just like the main structure. And then some felt pads under the rig for the floor so it doesn't scratch, 5 euros. Total cost 140 euros. Compare that to something popular like a SimLab GT1 Evo with a seat, which is around 700 to 800 euros. That's over 600 euros saved. The cheapest sim rig with a seat I could find was still 500 euros, so even compared to that, it's over 300 euros saved. And that's not even factoring in the monitor situation, which I'll cover in a bit. Honestly, for my needs, this wooden rig is actually better in some ways than these commercial rigs. Now you might be waiting for me to give you exact measurements or a materials list, but I'm not going to do that. And here's why. Because everyone's body is different, everyone's space is different, everyone's equipment mounts differently, especially in relation to what kind of chair or seat you use. What works for me might not work for you. Instead, I'm going to tell you the single most important step I took before building anything. I mocked it up first. Before I cut a single piece of wood, I used boxes and random pieces of wood to test the dimensions. I clamped my wheel to a wooden piece on some boxes, put my pedals on another box, sat in different positions on the chair I got and figured out what felt comfortable. I also looked at where my monitor would sit and then wrote down all those measurements. I wasn't guessing. I was building to dimensions I'd already tested with my own body and my own equipment. This is crucial. Don't skip this step. Spend an hour with boxes and scrap wood figuring out your ideal position. Let someone help you get the parts just in the right place. Then build to those specs. That's how you end up with a rig that's actually comfortable for you, not just a copy of someone else's measurements that might not fit you at all. So what do you actually need to build something like this? A power drill. That's the main tool. You'll be driving a lot of screws. A saw. Either a handsaw like this one or use power tools here as well, whatever you have. Sandpaper to smooth out any rough edges. And that's honestly about it. Now you can go as detailed as you want. You can sand everything smooth, paint it, make it look really professional. Or you can just keep it rough and functional like mine. Either way works. And here's the thing. I built this in my living room. You don't need a workshop. You don't need a garage full of tools. Just a power drill, a saw, and a place to work for a few hours. Now let me show you one of my favorite things about this setup. And it's something that most commercial rigs actually do worse than mine. See this monitor? It's the same main monitor I use on my desk. No need to buy a separate one just for sim racing. It just sits on a flat surface directly behind the wheelbase. Most commercial rigs have these elaborate monitor stands where the monitor is fixed in place. And while that looks cool, it creates a problem. Watch this. 5 seconds. That's my entire setup time now. I move the monitor from my desk to the rig and I'm ready to race. When I'm done, I move it back. No need to get a separate monitor just for sim racing. So if we are real here, we can add the price of the monitor to the list of savings compared to a commercial rig as well. I use this monitor for everything. For editing these videos, for work, for sim racing. And being able to move it effortlessly between my desk and my rig means there's zero friction. When I want to race, I race. No setup process, no hassle. And also compare that to the desk clamp days when the setup time killed my motivation before I even started. This simple design choice has genuinely been one of the best parts of this whole build. Alright, now let's talk about some other ways to save money in sim racing. Because small things add up. You probably know about button boxes. There's never enough buttons on your wheel, and the keyboard most of the time is not that comfortable to reach or just not that cool to use. If you look online, button boxes range from around 8 euros for the cheapest options up to 250 euros or more for the fancy ones with displays and RGB lighting. And what do? They give you extra buttons to map to different functions in your sim. Well, let me show you what I'm using. This is a cheap Numpad. Cost me 9 euros. And it does exactly the same thing. I can map every button to different functions, brake bias, traction control, pit limiter, whatever I need. It works perfectly. But here's where it gets even better. See these little icons? I printed these on adhesive film for 5 euros, so I know at a glance what each button does. This is still work in progress, and you might be able to guess that what I'm currently using this for is not sim racing, but actually trucking, with opening and closing the windows, for example. But that's not the point. Total cost for my button box setup, 14 euros. Compare that to 150 to 250 euros for a commercial button box. I saved a lot of money here, and I have the exact same functionality. Now, don't get me wrong, the expensive button boxes look cooler. They have nicer switches and knobs. But do they make you faster? No. Do they give you more control? Not really. They're a luxury, not a necessity. And while we're talking about budget optimizations, let me show you a couple other small things that have made a big difference. This is a keyboard with a built-in trackpad. Cost me 30 euros. Why is this great? Because I don't need a separate mouse. One less thing cluttering up my rig, one less battery to charge. And it's actually really convenient for navigating menus in the sim or checking settings. It's compact too. And then there's this. A Y connector for my headphones. Costs 13 euros. I have one of my headphones permanently plugged in at my desk and one permanently at the rig. So when I move from my desk to sim racing, I don't need to unplug anything or move the headphones and cables around. I just move the monitor, sit down, put on the headphones that are already there, and I'm ready to go. These are small things, right? But they add up. Not just in cost, which in this budget case really isn't that much, but in convenience. Every little bit of friction you can remove from your setup makes it that much easier to just enjoy sim racing. And another thing where a DIY rig really starts to shine, and this is something I didn't even appreciate until later. When I first built this rig, it pretty much looked like you see here. But then I decided I wanted to add a shifter. This is the Moza SGP sequential shifter, which by the way is a fantastic one. Really good quality. On a commercial rig, I'd be limited to wherever the pre-drilled mounting points are. And for a lot of rigs, those mounting points are in specified locations that might not be ideal for your seating position or your preferences. But with this rig, I just mounted it exactly where I needed it. Same with this handbrake. This is a cheap one from AliExpress that I got on Amazon during Black Friday for about 40 euros. It's totally serviceable for what I do. And again, I mounted it precisely where I wanted it. Does it look great? Well, maybe not, but it works like a charm. And then when I added the shifter and handbrake, I realized my keyboard was now in the way. It used to be mounted over here on the right side. So I just moved it to the left. Took me about maybe 15 minutes. Because I built it, I can modify it. There are no rules. There is no, this is where the manufacturer designed the mount to go. If I want to change something, I change it. If I want to add something, I add it. That's the beauty of a DIY rig. It grows with you. It adapts to your needs. You're not locked into someone else's design decisions. Alright, let's talk numbers. Because I think this is where the value of this approach really becomes clear. Here's what my complete setup cost. The DIY rig itself, 140 euros. The Numpad with custom labels, 14 euros. The keyboard with trackpad, 30 euros. The Y connector for headphones, 13 euros. Total, 197 euros. Let's call it 200. Now let's compare that to a commercial equivalent. The cheapest decent full sim rig I could find was 500 euros. Most cost more and sometimes even require you to buy the seat separately. So I saved at least 300 euros. And that's with my rig even having some extra things that commercial rigs don't have. Like the easier monitor setup I showed you earlier. And without requiring an extra monitor just for sim racing. If you add that, you're probably looking more in the ballpark of 500 euros or more in savings. That's not a small amount of money. That's the difference between being able to afford sim racing or not for a lot of people. Or that's money you could put towards better pedals or a better wheel or the games themselves. And here's the thing, my setup isn't worse. In some ways, like the monitor situation I showed you earlier, it's actually better for my needs. Of course, you can argue about how the rig looks, or that an aluminium rig is probably more sturdy than this. But to be honest, I don't really notice any shortcomings with my rig. There's almost no flex at all. It really has served me well for almost 2 years now. And it costs less than most people spend on a single component. So look, sim racing doesn't have to break the bank. If you're racing at a desk right now, thinking you can't afford an upgrade, or you're looking at wheel stand or sim rig prices and feeling discouraged, I'm here to tell you that you absolutely can build something better for less money. Figure out what works for your body and your space. Mock it up with boxes, scrap wood, and whatever you have. Test your dimensions. Then build to those specs. Make it yours. Don't feel like you need to copy someone else's measurements or follow some elaborate plan. The best rig is the one that fits you perfectly. And you're the only person that knows what that is. And if you now feel inspired to do this, or maybe you already did, let me know down in the comments. I'd love to hear what your current setup looks like or what's been holding you back from upgrading. And if you end up building something yourself or already did, I'd love to see it. Share pictures, share your experience. Maybe together we can make something even better with your ideas. Leave a like on the video if this helped you out in any way and subscribe for more sim racing content. Thanks a lot for watching. I've been HG Racing and I will hopefully see you in the next one.